The Washington Commanders have a new kicker as they are signing Ramiz Ahmed, a recently released kicker from the UFL's Birmingham Stallions. So we're going to be breaking down this signing today, whether or not I believe that Ahmed's going to be the long-term 2024 starter for the Washington Commanders today. But before we get into it, this is why you subscribe to the channel, folks. Subscribe for Commanders breaking news updates all offseason long. Every time they make a signing, every time they make a cut, every time they make a trade, every time they make an extension, whatever the case may be, if we have breaking news on the Commanders, whether it's my day off like we had this weekend, or whether I'm in studio here at the office, if there's breaking news for the Commanders, we're going to have you guys covered with a video every single time. So for the most reliable, most dedicated Commanders coverage here on YouTube, make sure you click that subscribe button right now. So let's talk about Ramiz Ahmed here, newest kicker for the Washington Commanders. Obviously, the Commanders released Brandon McManus on Sunday, and after some sexual assault allegations were levied against him, didn't even kick a single game with the Commanders. And then, the Commanders have had to go into kind of emergency mode here, and they're getting a guy in Ramiz Ahmed who was just released by the Birmingham Stallions. He kicked for them for a stretch this season. We'll go into his numbers later in today's show, but his draft year was 2022. He was picked up by the Green Bay Packers. He played in one regular season game back then in 2022 with Green Bay. He didn't attempt any field goals. It was just kickoffs in that scenario for him, but now it looks like he's going to have his opportunity and his big shot to be an NFL kicker here in the nation's capital. We're going to be breaking down kind of his numbers here in the UFL, and then also whether or not I think the Commanders are going to bring in more competition at this position once the UFL season kind of wraps up. I'll let you guys know my answers to those questions here in just a second, but first, let me know down there in the comments section, what is your one-word reaction to this move? All right, so after the prize picks, or after I tell you about our friends at Fanatics here in just a second, I'm going to give you my one-word reaction, but this is going to be today's pinned comment. So while I'm talking about Fanatics here in just a second, take advantage of that time by going down into the comments section and let me know your one-word reaction to the Commander signing new kicker Ramiz Ahmed. And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Fanatics. Go to chatsports.com/Daniels to get your very own Washington Commanders Jaden Daniels jersey today. And also, if you want, if you're going to get a Jaden Daniels jersey anyway and you want to kind of support the channel here, if you use our link, chatsports.com/Daniels, I'm going to put that link in the comments and description of today's show. You click that link and you make a purchase. Our friends at Fanatics are going to give us some of the proceeds here at the Commanders Report, so we really do appreciate all of your support. If you're planning on getting a Jaden Daniels jersey, you believe in the kid, you think he's going to be the next star quarterback of the Washington Commanders, go ahead right now, go to chatsports.com/Daniels and make a purchase. So my one word here is this could be a placeholder here, guys, okay? Because, the UFL season is still going on. NFL teams are not allowed to sign players at this point in the process here. They can sign those players once the season is over in a couple of weeks. But because Ahmed was a UFL kicker and was released by the Stallions last week, that means that he is available for NFL teams to pick up, and that is exactly what the Washington Commanders are doing right now. But, once the UFL season does wrap up, I absolutely do expect the Washington Commanders to revisit this position and potentially bring in one, if not more, UFL kickers to compete with Ahmed during training camp. And hell, they might even just release Ahmed here, and they might just have Ahmed come in and be kind of a placeholder as a kicker for the special teams drills during mandatory minicamp next week and all these different things, because they're going to need somebody to do those things, right? So I think Ahmed is coming in here as kind of a placeholder, and I do think that he might have an opportunity to compete during the preseason and in training camp, especially if he impresses at Commanders practices over the next several weeks. But take a look at his UFL stats here, kind of a shorter stint with the Birmingham Stallions, okay? They got their kicker got hurt at the beginning of the season. They brought in Ahmed to replace him, and, he was 10 of 13, so 77% is definitely not fantastic. Now, the good news is he was 6 of 6 below 40 yards, so, for those shorter kicks, he's reliable in that way. Now, when you go beyond 40 yards, it's about 50-50, 4 of 7, so he's not necessarily somebody that you can absolutely trust with longer field goals, and as we know in the National Football League, if you are a kicker, you are expected to be able to nail anything within 50 yards, and you're even expected to be pretty reliable from 50-plus yards away. So I'm not sure if Ahmed is actually a long-term answer for the Washington Commanders here. I definitely think that they're going to bring in more competition, whether that's a veteran like a Randy Bullock or a Joey Sly or somebody from the UFL, which is actually something that I would prefer to do if I'm the Washington Commanders. There is a kicker in the UFL currently kicking for the Michigan Panthers. His name is Jake Bates. We've talked about him on the show. He had a 64-yard field goal just earlier this season. This is somebody that has a rocket leg. He's still relatively young here. I think this guy's an NFL kicker, a legit one, and once the UFL season wraps up, I think there's going to be a lot of teams actually trying to get Jake Bates on their team. So listen, I mean, like if the Chiefs come calling or if like a good football team comes calling and saying, hey, Jake Bates, we're going to give you an opportunity to compete for our starting job. Maybe Bates doesn't come to the Commanders, but listen, man, I don't think there is a more for sure starting kicking job in the National Football League right now than the Washington Commanders. So if Bates just wants like a guaranteed job in the National Football League, the Commanders are probably going to be his number one destination once the UFL season wraps up here. And with that leg, man, 64-yard field goal earlier this season, super reliable as well. I think he's somebody that the Commanders should absolutely have on their radar, and I actually predict that the Commanders will bring him in to compete with Ahmed during training camp this year. So predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will Ramiz Ahmed be the Commanders' starting kicker in 2024, or will it be somebody else? Give me a yes or give me a no to let me know what you guys have to think or what you guys think about the newest Commanders kicker. Now, listen, guys, some final thoughts here before we wrap things up. I mean, I think that this is something where the Commanders are like, we don't want to bring in an older guy that's, you know, kind of washed up, like a Dan Bailey or a Kai Forbath or a Blair Walsh or somebody along those lines. They want somebody, that's a little bit younger, that's a bit more fresh. And Ramiz Ahmed is somebody that is kicked recently. I mean, he's relatively fresh here. And I do think that he's going to be a decent placeholder during OTAs and mandatory minicamp. And I do think they probably keep him on the roster throughout training camp and the preseason. But I would say Ahmed's going to be hard-pressed to be the starting number one kicker for the Washington Commanders heading into the year. I don't think the Commanders are done putting in competition here in, heading into training camp. And I'd actually be pretty surprised if they don't bring another kicker. And I wouldn't be surprised, I'll say this right now, I wouldn't be surprised if they bring in 2 more kickers and really have like a true competition between 3 or even 4 kickers here in Washington and kind of just say, may the best man win during training camp. Because, I mean, Brandon McManus and, that whole situation has really put the Commanders in a tough situation. All the top kickers in the league have already been taken, so they really need to kind of finesse their way into a legit NFL kicker here. Good news is Jake Bates in the UFL is going to be available at the end of that UFL season this spring, and he's got a rocket leg. He's relatively young. You might be able to get a franchise kicker, and this whole Brandon McManus situation might end up being a blessing in disguise for this football team. That'll be it for today's show, guys. Really do appreciate all of your support. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already, because if they sign another kicker, if they bring in another player in free agency, if they make a trade of some sort, we're going to have you guys covered with breaking news coverage as well as our daily and free Commanders news and rumors coverage right here on YouTube. So what are you waiting for? Make sure you click that subscribe button right now. And until next time, hail to the Commanders.